All right, I got Blair LaCorte on the show today. He is not only the vice chairman of the Buck Institute, which is the world's leading longevity and research center, but he's an entrepreneur, investor, and future astronaut with Virgin Atlantic. I can't wait to dive into that. Blair, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you, Joel. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, man. Wanted. I mean, you've got so much diversity working with leaders and just tech companies and AI and innovation. So there's so many things I want to talk to you about. But one of the things I know that you're also really passionate is anti-aging and longevity. Just kind of walk us through, like, how'd you get into this space?
Yeah, I have always, been involved in some way, athletics or health, but this one was very fortuitous. It got me two things that I hope will give me a longer life. One was it got me my wife, and the second it got me an inside seat in one of the premier independent institutes in the world that really does not look at selling you anything, but looks at what's working and what's not working and why are people or why are people doing it and why aren't they doing it. And so the reason I actually got involved is I was driving by the Buck Institute and I was trying to impress this girl I was dating, and she started spouting off about all, she's a psychoanalyst and one of the top people, and she wrote the book on yoga and talk therapy and health and things like that. And she started talking to me with the Buck, and I said, "Oh yeah, I could be involved with the Buck," and she started laughing at me. So it took me 2 weeks to actually work my network and get involved. And I found out that not only did I married her, but I also got to be involved with a group of people that inspire me every week. Really, just smart people who have taken. They literally 30 years ago took the opposite approach of everybody on longevity, and they're turning out to be 100% right.
Wow. Wow. I want to ask you, because you say that aging is an outdated operating system. So I guess what's the upgrade? And like, why haven't most people installed it yet?
So, when you take a look at what the Buck actually said at the very beginning was, look, you can look at all these diseases that you try to solve. And in reality, the number one correlate to all these diseases is age, but this is not what's causing aging. What's causing aging is that your system biology is malfunctioning, and that we are all have our own system biology. And if we focus on that, and one of the key indicators is chronic inflammation, that we can actually either stop or actually bring back aging. Now, at a certain point, you're going to reach a theoretical limit. I'm not the big believer that you can say, "Hey, listen, in our lifetime, you're going to live to 150." I can tell you that we're involved, and we just made the semifinals of the X Prize, and we're going to win it. That we're going to in the next 18 months show you that I can add 10 years of health span to your life immediately, and that's a
Really?
massive, massive deal. If you take a look at Americans in specific, we die 14 years before we die. So longevity is one thing. How long do you actually live? And you know, we're 39th in the world in longevity, even though we spend 10 times as much. And I can give you a bunch of reasons why, and they're not going to be surprising. But if you look at health span, we're number one and lowest health span in the world. We in America die 14 years before we die. And what I mean by that is we have at least two chronic illnesses leading to three chronic illnesses, leading to four chronic illnesses. So we start to the quality of our life starts to deteriorate 14 years. So if the average lifespan blended between men and women is 76, at 62, you're basically your life is deteriorating significantly. That's why if I'm in an audience and I say, "Does anyone want to live to 150?" No one's hands go up. When I say, "Does anyone want to live to 150 at the health that they actually are at 50 years old?" They all go up because we actually look at we've accepted that health span is correlated directly to longevity, and it's not. Right? You want to live long and healthy, and then you want to die in the last year. You want to deteriorate in the last
Right.
year. Die quick. Okay.
Okay, a question on that, because I had a guy, Kashif Khan, on the show talking about DNA and our telomere length. And
Yeah.
he was telling me that the human DNA, from what the evidence is and the research, the telomeres are only meant to last 120 years. But you're saying you could even go beyond, you said 10, 14 years beyond that? How are
No,
we?
I'm saying that. Look, right now, I would agree with that. That we are structurally designed. That saying we're going to live to 150. That's a very, very difficult task because we'd have to optimize everything. but saying that I could add 10 more healthy years to your life is doable now.
Gotcha.
Right. And I
Gotcha.
can tell you that when you're on your deathbed or you've got two chronic illnesses and you're on a walker or you're getting, dementia, having 10 healthy years, you'd pay anything for. Right. The,
Agreed.
the problem
Yeah.
is all our money now goes to when we're broken, doesn't go to extending health span. And there's a reason for that. Right. And the reason is that we did a great job building a healthcare system that was designed to eliminate childhood death. When you look at the extension and longevity in the Western world, it was a lot of it had to do with childhood death, right? And so that was number one. And then viruses. And then we started to look for more things to cure that could be cured after you got them. And then we started looking at cancers and things like that. But if you really, really think about it, all of the systems we set up then where people made money and they invested money were designed to try to stop you once you're broken, right?
Yeah.
Versus actually figuring out how to not make you sick. The number one amazing cure to illness is not to get ill, right? And so we used to argue 15 years ago on whether, inflammation, was that an outcome of illness or did it cause illness? And the reality is yes. When you get sick, your immune system kicks up to try to cure you. When you get chronic inflammation, where your immune system is working all the time, it then makes you sick,
Yeah.
right? It should, we're a machine, and that machine running too often and never resting doesn't have the capability when an external force comes in to actually cure you. So, there's a big argument about, okay, is it mental attitude or, is it, drugs that you would give you? Again, I can cure you with drugs, but every time I change your system biology, I take a roll of a dice that I'm going to do damage someplace else. If you have cancer and you're going to die, you will take chemo. But within 10 years after you take chemo, you're going to have other damage that may kill you, right? So if we can back up that clock and we can say, what would we do to actually prevent you to push out that curve of these chronic illnesses, you would not age. And that's when people say, "Hey, I'm going to take a biological age, versus a chronological age." What they're trying to figure out is biomarkers that and protein markers that will tell you how likely you are to get a chronic illness, right? So it's all about just backing those chronic illnesses up to the point where you live a healthy life and you live that life longer.
Speaking of those tests, I was going to ask you, do you like any of them? Do you think they're valuable or like worth their what they measure, or are they all? Are we still kind of in the early stages of that?
So we're in our third generation. I mean, I would say that we're finally getting to the point. Right now, if you took five of the tests, the most popular tests out there, you'd find a great variability
Yep.
in it. And you'd also find a variability about when you took the test in the morning and the night. Now, do they have indicative value to them? Most of them do, because if you track it over time, even if it's not consistent with the other tests, you'll be consistent in your improvements in it. They're nice. They're Gen 1 and Gen 2. Today, we're coming out with the tests that are coming out, right now are much more predictive than they were before. And but really, what are they doing? They're a scorecard. They're a scorecard to say, is your system biology being effective?
Yeah.
So would I say that you take them as an end? No, I'd say you take them as a means to an end, which is let me just take a snapshot. But I would also say that when you're taking a snapshot, there's an awful lot of other things that you would take versus your biological age, right? And so you mentioned earlier genetics. Genetics have about a 7% predictive on what's going to happen to you. Okay, they're hardwired. And of that 7% predictive, there was a huge fear that I'm not taking my genetics because I'll find that thing that I'm going to die of ALS and there's no way to cure it. That's about a hundredth of 1%. It turns out that you take a look at it now, we have 120 million anonymized records in the US today. There's been a lot of work done on different things. It's not the same test as 23andMe anymore. So you can find out a lot of things. For instance, I can take your genetics and I can tell you whether a certain statin will work or not. So you're not guessing. When they give you a statin, they go, take this and we'll see if it works. I
Yeah.
can actually tell you. I can tell you whether you can lower your cholesterol through exercise from your genetics because it's predictive. So what genetics are just predictors of what will happen to you. The phenomics or the expression of those genes, 93% of what's going to happen to those genes have to do with your lifestyle, right? And there's only 5 things that affect that prediction. And we believe it's a multivariate, that you have to be wary of all 5 things. You don't have to be perfect in all of them, but your system biology will be activated if you are not cautious about 5 things. And the 5 things are very straightforward. I think the one that's most surprising to people, and in the military, we would call it a force multiplier. There is one thing that has a 10 to 20 times impact on whether your genes will express themselves in a negative way. So, what do you think that is? If you did one thing and you did all 4 of the others okay, but not perfectly, the one thing would have a 10 to 20 times bigger impact.
Well, I mean, you're saying what's the one thing is that's the force multiplier?
Yes.
Ah.
Of the 5 things that you would do to balance your system biology.
And then there's so many. I'm thinking community, I'm thinking nutrition, I'm thinking I know exercise. There's a study showing that it's like the number one predictor of lowering oxidative stress. So part of me wants to say that, but I think it's your nutrition is what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say
So
nutrition,
do you?
Blair.
So do you? It's basically, do you have one dyadic relationship in your life at any given time? Okay, which is a sub. It's a very precise form of community, can actually bring you closer to that. But it turns out that there's 2 things that drive human biology. One is that your amygdala is always screening for survival. So every sense that you have, their first thing that they're looking for is danger,
Yeah.
which is why you can be triggered very easily. Why do young girls get impacted so heavily on social media by, weight? Because they're looking at that and saying, I am not going to be connected because I am not at the right weight, and therefore I am going to be kicked out of the tribe, and therefore I will die. It goes right into your amygdala and it is fear of death. That isn't a fear of weight. That isn't a fear of good looks. That is a fear of death,
Mm.
right? So when you look at this whole idea around dyadic relationship, you're driven towards fear to survive, and you're driven towards love. That's
Yeah.
it. Those are the 2 things that balance your brain. Okay. And it comes into play in your parasympathetic nervous system, which our parasympathetic nervous system is different than every other mammal. And it's given us a couple of things, which is, you can argue that it's why we are actually a dominant species. Whether we should be or not is a second question. But why we're a dominant species is that our parasympathetic nervous system allows us to do 2 things. It allows us to actually imagine connection, which means I don't have to be in the same little tribe, like, and see you every day. I can say I believe in this and they believe in this, and we are, both, quilters, and we have a connection and we believe in quilting. And that's why, you can say, small groups are so effective. The other thing that our parasympathetic nervous system does that's very, very different is it supercharges our immune system. So
Mm.
when we get to safety, our immune system actually gets much, much stronger, right? And the problem is that in westernized society, we don't take it as seriously. And I'll give you one very specific example, right? So a dyadic relationship, if you look it up, only means a one-on-one. You have to have at least one one-on-one relationship where both you believe someone's empathetic, which means you think they care about you, and you believe that they're compassionate, which means by deed or action, you believe that they would actually do something, even if it wasn't in their best interest to do. Right. And now I want you to think about that. This is probably the most important thing I will say to you in this whole thing, is that you go, oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. Everyone wants someone to love them. Everyone wants someone to make them feel safe. That's what I want my parents to do. But think about that. Think about that idea that someone would step in. My dad would always tell me when I was growing up, don't just send a birthday card to someone you love on their birthday. Send it not on their birthday. Why? Because it
Mm.
triggers in their head that they know that you didn't do it because you had to. You did it because you were thinking about them. And it has a much bigger effect. He would always say, when you're walking down the street and you see someone you don't know, make a real attempt to smile and nod your head at them, because they're going to look away immediately, because every animal looks away, because looking them right in the eyes, if I don't know who you are, is a threat. So go down the street and don't smile and look at someone, and they will look away. Absolutely. Right. So do these little things. And why did he say do that? Because that level of signaling that I am not a threat and that I must care because I'm intentionally doing this subconsciously has an impact. And for most of us, it's not only finding someone who I believe loves us and will be fair to us, it's actually feeling like we deserve it, because we process 17 million things a second. We process 150 consciously. which means that most of what we process every day is subconscious, and most of what we do is based on our history and our belief on whether should be loved or not. And so you can have someone that loves you. You've seen these people. You have these friends. They're like, oh my God, his wife is unbelievable, right? But he never seems to be happy. He never seems to feel safe. And that idiot is out there cheating on her. Why? That's moronic. He's got everything that he says he wants
Yep.
because subconsciously he doesn't believe he deserves it. Right. And so the number one thing you can do for your health
Mm.
is to actually find ways to connect with people, and especially one-on-one connection. Now, clearly connecting something bigger to yourself, a cause or a group, or, the people in your town is good. And clearly having a purpose within that group, saying that this is why I'm here, and I have a reason to get up every day and do that. Clearly, that's additive to this. But that number one thing is a force multiplier to nutrition, to, I'll call, movement versus exercise, to the maintenance cycle of your body, and to what you're exposing your body to, which is the external environment. Those four things you've heard over and over again. But I can tell you the number one cause of mental illness under 25 is loneliness. The number one cause of death, number one cause of death over 65 is loneliness. The number one cause of behavior that's hurtful to you in between is loneliness, because we are always, whether we realize it or not, trying to figure out, introverts and extroverts the same, just a different implementation, whether we have people who love us, whether we have a tribe, and whether we have a meaning to be here. And I'm on a rant, so I'm going to give you the final thing. If we were doing a business strategy and I was telling you, listen, let's figure out what our vision is for this business. In life, your vision is going to be, I want to die and actually feel, I didn't want to die, but when I die, I want to feel like I had the life that I deserve. Across culture, time, and geography, thousands of years worth of data, thousands of years worth of people analyzing it, philosophers, scientists. There's five things that go across most cultures. And the first two have to do with, why the hell am I dying? This isn't fair. What could have I done differently? Can I change it? Right. But the last three are very clear. What is your goal? You want to answer these three questions. Did I actually have someone who loved me, and did I love someone? Okay, that's one question people ask themselves. Who loves me and who do I love when I'm about to die? The second is, did I make any difference at all? Are people going to remember me? Did I have a purpose to be here? What was life really about? And the third one is the most important because it impacts the other two. Did I live an authentic life? Which meant, did I get to know myself and trust myself and take enough risk? They never asked, the things I failed at, the things I didn't do. And why? Because if you don't show vulnerability and you don't show people who you are, you're never going to believe they love you because they don't know who you are. So when you're authentic, you're able to connect deeper. So if we're all going to die someday, and those are the questions you're going to ask yourself. So the same things that are going to keep you alive longer are also going to make you okay when you die. Seems too simple, but I can tell you, I'm in an academic institution, and all of the scientists would tell you the same thing. Without the balance of the parasympathetic nervous system, all of those other external actions you're taking are not as effective.
Wow. So critical. I love that you said it. So balancing the nervous system, staying as much as you can in parasympathetic state, that's the number one hallmark to living a longer and more fulfilling life.
Because that's what your body is designed for. It's designed to, humans die without stress. If you have too little stress,
Mm.
you die. If you have too much stress all the time, you die. But the whole point of cognitive dissonance is that you're building neurons because you're trying to figure something out. And the whole point of ripping muscle is you're stressing your muscle to grow. Don't get me wrong. This isn't about sitting in a Buddhist temple all day long. You should go out there and stress your body and learn, and have bad times and good times and things like that. But if you don't find a way that you can actually balance your parasympathetic nervous system, just like an athlete that has time to actually recoup, your system will be too stressed out to help you live longer,
Yeah.
right? And I can give you the examples in food, in movement, and in maintenance, which is sleep and touch, how you can see it. If you were a machine, you'd say, wow, I can understand why those things are actually impacted by me having my immune system be more rested, because it can come in and help me. Inflammation is good, chronic inflammation is not good.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you on that note about community and stress, the blue zones, because that comes up a lot in the longevity space. And I know there's a lot of people that will refer to that. I know also a lot of people in the industry that say the blue zones is complete bullshit, and there's some bad science there. Where are you guys kind of at the Buck Institute? What are your thoughts on that? And I mean, some of
Yeah,
those.
listen, we don't, we work with almost every scientist. We've worked with a team. Look, we have our opinions, and our opinion is that the blue zone may be a little bit marketing because we're oversimplifying it to try to give people an example,
Yeah,
but that some of the basics in there, that the fact that the blue zones work because there's intergenerational connection and community is absolutely true. The fact that they're eating certain things is true. So, for instance, when you talk about blue zones in the U.S., this is like the irony of trying to market versus trying to actually be able to hold the ambiguity in your head. So, in Europe, there's been a bunch of studies that show that smokers live longer. Of course,
they're more
they don't talk
relaxed,
about
right?
them,
They're more
but
relaxed.
if you're in a village that you're every day you go down and 4 times a day you smoke with your friends and you're relaxed, that community, clearly you're doing damage to your body. But the community and the consistency of the community actually is positive. In the U.S., one of the top blue zones is, I believe it's Los Gatos, where the largest group of the
Loma
half the town
Linda,
is
I think.
7 day Adventists, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Because there's a lot of them. They're all consistent with each other, and there's a lot of community in that. Am I telling you should smoke? Am I telling you should be a Seventh Day? I'm not. I'm telling you that there's a correlation between finding things that actually make you feel comfortable and safe that impacts how long you live and how healthy that you live. We all want to oversimplify it. So I would say there's four things that matter, and I will tell you, I helped hire Lee Hood and Nathan Price. They had written the book before we hired them, so I'm not pumping the book, but they wrote a book called Scientific Wellness, and it says four things that science today can predict and prevent in ways that it could never, ever, ever do. That you can see illness coming and you can prevent it without drugs. You can just prevent it with lifestyle. And they've proven it. Their Avondale study with 5,000 people over 10 years is unbelievable. That they can see the change. The other thing that they say is, but if you're really going to actually make yourself have a longer health span, you have to participate and you have to personalize. That no one is the same. And that, it's ironic when you look, and this is not a conspiracy theory, this is the truth, right? We are very good when we're focused in capitalism. And so someone gets sick and they have cancer. And what's the first thing that the GP says? Oh my God, should go see a specialist. At that moment, you and your family learn everything they possibly can. You take every test you possibly can. You become highly engaged in it. And there's a lot of companies that do research and they have drugs and they have chemo and they have all this stuff. And we try to fix you. And why? Because there's money in that. That's not a bad thing. You need a cure and you need it now. There's money in that. Now, in reality, if you had actually been as focused on your health and your system biology and your GP was actually looking at ways for you to avoid it, you may have actually not got cancer. But it's difficult because the GPs, that's not their job right now. 99% of what a GP does is look for things that are broken. And 100% of what you get in a hospital is they're trying to fix you. So
Yeah.
we have a world class system for fixing things. But because all the money is in fixing things, we're not spending money in actually keeping you out of the hospital and personalizing it up front. So you're seeing a wave right now. If there's anyone on this podcast who hasn't seen, 1,000 Facebook ads of longevity, if the word longevity was not even a word 5 years ago, people have realized that this other system is not working and they're trying to figure out how to make money off of prevention. So the biggest issue now isn't that people don't want to do it, it's just very confusing, which is why I try to break it down to like really simple things. Like at the end of the day, first thing is you better have good mental health and good connection. And then when you take a look at food, I've owned two diet companies, they're awesome because no, it's the only product that I can sell you that when you fail, you blame yourself. You go, oh, it's my fault, and then you'll be back in 18 months. the truth is that unless you take some data, you don't know what diet you should be on. No diet's good for anyone. CGM, constant glucose monitor. We spent $1 billion developing it for diabetics. Why? Because they're really sick and they're going to be sick the rest of their lives. And there's a lot of money in giving something to a sick person. It took us 6 years to get them to doctors to get it off prescription that you could get a CGM. Why wouldn't you be able to get something that told you what spikes your sugar? Does that make any sense to you at all?
Nope.
That doctors would not give you a CGM. And their excuse was, you're going to get confused by it. It's too much information. And by the way, it is sophisticated because depending on when you eat something, depending on whether you exercise, but if you're really going to participate, a CGM is an unbelievable tool. For those of you who have never actually done a CGM test, for $100 to see what things are spiking your insulin, number one cause of inflammation, glucose. Okay. If you don't know what spikes your glucose, you don't know what foods are good for you. I think you're that's a problem. Okay. So it's first step to everything is first step to diet is figuring out what works with your system, right? First thing with, if you take a look at exercise, humans are designed to be stressed, but they're not designed to exercise. Why would we? Thousands of years we ran towards things to kill it and we ran away from things that were killing us. We didn't go out and say, today's a day to exercise, right? In fact, the reason that muscle confusion, I used to own gyms. They say, oh my God, we need to do muscle confusion because gyms are the same way, right? We're going to give you new exercises. Why did we have to do muscle confusion? Because your body, the more you do the same thing, the more efficient it gets at it so you don't burn calories. You are designed not to burn calories because who knows how much food you're going to get, so you get more efficient at it. So this whole idea in your head about exercise is wrong. Humans are designed to move every day. Every study that's ever been done on movement says that you're better off moving 15 minutes every hour or 2 to 3 minutes every 15 minutes than you are doing 2 hours of exercise every day. You are
Yep.
doing a bad trade. Now, if you want to do exercise because you get a high on it and you want to build muscle or whatever, exercise you can do, but it is not the primary derivative. The primary derivative is you move 15 minutes every hour, the toxins don't sit in your organs and they don't sit in your joints, and your body is designed, your system biology is designed to reoptimize itself when blood's moving and you have isometrics. Okay. And so
Yeah.
you're moving around. When you talk about HIT, again, do you know what the optimum amount of HIT for a human is?
I would imagine. I mean, I'm looking over here at my Carol bike, this AI bike that I do 2 10-second sprints all out, and
Yeah.
that's it. So
So
I don't.
and by the way, the Carol bike is awesome, right?
Yeah,
Because it's getting you that full thing. It's 10 minutes a day.
yeah. That's what.
Okay. Now, if you can do an hour and you want to do an hour and you get endorphins off it, or you want to do things, or you're trying to build out your cardiovascular system, or you're trying to build muscle, you can do more. When you get above that, unless you're on the normal curve where you just absolutely going to have a nervous breakdown if you don't do it, or your body can't sit still. On a normal curve, the average person needs 10 minutes, but the 10 minutes of HIT does not give you 80% of the benefit unless you do 10 minutes of LIT. Because if you were a machine, you'd say, I bring up the revs and I get the heartbeat up and I get the thing moving. And then sometime during the same day, sometime in 24 hours, I bring the LIT down, low intensity, right? And
Yeah.
what is low intensity? You can say it's meditation, but you can get most of that by putting on an eye mask, listening to classical music, and just breathing.
Mm,
Because why? What does your machine want? It wants to know how its upper bound is. It wants to know how it rests, and then it wants to rebalance its hormones and its system biology during the day. So again, when you look at it, you only have to do a couple. If you actually check to find out what causes you inflammation, and you eat as many vegetables and fresh goods as you can, you probably get the majority of what you need out of nutrition. When you do 10 minutes of LT, 10 minutes of LIT, and you move 15 minutes, you get a big portion of it. And when you talk about maintenance, maintenance is touch and sleep. If you're not, the benefit you get out of hugging for more than 10 seconds, which I know can be problematic if you don't know the person, um, intimacy, right? Or just touching and hugging or holding hands,
mm.
massive impact on your system biology. every day. And sleep has nothing to do. We have to bring it down to like, oh, you need 8 hours of sleep. The reality is the number one thing around sleep is consistency.
Yeah.
It's not, it's when you go to bed. If you go to bed at the same time 5 days a week, you get a tremendous benefit because your maintenance crew knows when to expect to sleep and it gets 20% more effective. Now, if you go to sleep at the same time 5 days a week and it's on your chronotype, you get 100 times more benefit because your chronotype, which I can tell you from your DNA and I can tell you from a sleep test when your chronotype is, you are designed to actually get deep sleep in the first 2 hours of your chronotype and you're designed to get REM sleep in the last 2 hours. Now you go through 8 cycles and you get it all, but the big bangs are at the beginning, at the end, which is why they tell you, like the rule of thumb is, well, if you go to bed after midnight, you're going to miss deep sleep. For the most of the chronotypes, that's true. But if
Yeah.
you go to bed too early, you miss REM sleep. If you go to bed too late, you miss deep sleep. That's why the aura rings and all these things are trying to train you when your chronotype is. So what I can tell you is that 100th of 1% of people are not doing damage with if they sleep less than 6 hours. They're doing damage. I don't care what you say. You're overriding your system. But in
You said less
reality,
than 6 hours. Is that what you said?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're not genetically. No one is genetically designed. There's a bunch of chronotypes that are not chronotypes, but genetic differences that would allow you to do it, but it's a very small group of people that it's the same kind of thing that when you talk about people who can eat and drink, smoke and drink whiskey and do terrible things and they live to 100 and they only deteriorate in the last year, they have a different genetic makeup that their immune system is recovering every day. And the sleep thing is the same thing. You have a different genetic makeup and you're not going to actually train yourself to do that. So again, you do these simple things. You go to bed at the right time and you do it 5 days a week consistently. And the final thing is just this thing that you would do with your car, but you don't think about it with you, which is where do you store it? Right? Everyone knows that smoking's bad because your lungs take in smoke. Everyone knows that if you live in Beijing, you're going to die earlier because you're taking in smoke. You always think about your lungs, but the biggest organ is your skin. And you have a biome on your skin bigger than the biome in your stomach. Okay. And so anything that touches your skin, like suntan lotion that isn't organic, or when you have washing liquid for your clothes that isn't organic and it touches your skin all day on your clothes, that deteriorates your body's ability to balance its system biology. So again, what I would say to people is, I don't know if it's radical or not radical, is that we're too focused on fixing and we're too focused on um, the four things that we talk about: the fuel, the movement, the maintenance, and the external exosome. We have to be focused on whether you actually love and whether you connect, because you'll be back there anyway.
Yep.
Whether you think you want it anyways, there's going to be some point in time when you're going to ask whether your life had purpose, and you'd rather have it be longer and have purpose. That's the win. That's the top right hand box. I lived longer, healthier, and I don't want to die, but I lived a good life.
Yeah. I love that. By the way, the DNA test, is there one that you like for the consumer that's pretty good? Because you're talking about the chronotypes. Is there one that kind of covers all these bases if people are looking to get that?
So there's two or three that are really good. I would say, and I'll send them to you, and you can put them in your chat.
Yeah.
The challenge is not the test. The big data stuff is great. It's getting a doctor who will walk through it. There's not a
Yeah, that's
lot
what I
of
was
people
hoping
who
too.
are trained
Yeah.
on it. So when you get the report, tells you some things. It's going to tell you your markers for EPO, like that. Oh my God, Alzheimer's. Those big things it will tell you. But the problem is that you need to spend a couple of hours with someone who goes through and says, let's look at the subtlety. So I would say the test is not as hard to find as a doctor who is specialized
Yeah. Yep.
in
That makes
looking
sense.
at phenomics and expression of genes, because what you're doing is basically saying I'm predicting what's going to happen.
Right, right, right. Also and then you mentioned how crucial eating is based on your bio individuality. Is there a gut test like Viome or something that you like that for the average person to do to kind of get some idea of what that is?
Well,
Obviously,
I have taken Biome, and I think that they probably at this point have the biggest database. Now everything's going to have its pluses and minuses, and I love Naveen. But what the big argument about Biome is not whether Biome can test your biome and give you great results. The question is they also sell supplements. So
Right.
you just have to be aware that they may be right about those supplements. They may not be right about those supplements. But um, I will actually I have a little 17-page cheat sheet that I use, and I will send it to you,
Oh, I
and
love
you
that.
can pull
Yeah.
out what you want from
Yeah.
that. But what I say is that for and this is to to my friends, all my friends out there, I believe, I'm not a doctor, right, but I play one on TV and I've spent a lot of time in this space, is that there's probably 10 things that you can do, tests that you can do to set you know your basis. Because the other thing about setting your basis is when you get sick later, what they're looking for is the changes from when you were healthy, and
Hmm.
most people only get the tests when they're sick,
Yeah.
and so they don't really see what the dynamic change is. So longitudinal ability, that's why functional health with their blood tests every quarter, it's really interesting. So there's 10 things that you can do, everywhere from doing a CGM twice a year to taking biomarkers with blood tests to controversial, but is a full body MRI worth it every 3 years? Um, those things you can do, I believe will de-risk 50% you being surprised by something.
Yeah.
There are also 10 things you can do, which I just laid out, two things in each category that can probably give you 10 extra years of health span, which are taking a look at what foods you're allergic to and what foods actually you process better, taking a look at, in exercise, what you're responding to, your sleep, focusing on those different things. I say to people, look, you can probably take a half an hour extra a day, and that's all you need to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Curious for you, Blair, like what are you doing right now that you think most people aren't to live to 120 or beyond?
So the more obscure things
Yeah, the
that
more
I
obscure
think
because
I'm,
all you gave the 5 pillars, by the way, which I think are amazing. And that is where that's the foundation. I get that. You got to start there. Don't skip steps. Always start there. But,
right. So
what
I'll give you one thing that I think I do that I feel like there's a lot of research behind, but it's more obscure. So, for instance, in sleep, there's a state of sleep. Like if you're on your chronotype and you're getting the kind of quality sleep you want, um, there's a state when you wake up where you're awake, but you just don't move, right? And you sit in bed, right? And you sit in bed. I sit in bed for 10 minutes, and what I do is I actually, just like you do when you're golfing, I have my setup, right? I have my setup for the day. And when you're golfing, you place your feet, you stretch out, you take a couple of strokes, you look at the where you want the ball to go, and then you go and hit it. And you try to hit it consistently. So this helps you hit it consistently. You're doing a setup. My setup for my day, and the reason I say it's obscure is because there have been studies done on it, but I wouldn't say that it's a peer reviewed, that everyone believes the same thing. That when you sit in bed, I sit in bed and said, I love my life, I love my wife, I love my kids, I love my, where I live. I say positive things to myself. I just lying there. I'm awake, my eyes are closed, and I say positive things to myself. The other thing I do is that I always, and this one is much more accepted, is I try to, in the first half an hour after I get up, I try to get up and get out of the house, out from behind a window for at least 10 minutes, right? Because that's when in the morning, when the red rays come and it reprograms your brain. So I try to actually make sure I have the best day I can by doing things at the very beginning of my day. Then I take a glass of water, right? Because it's the best time to drink is in the morning. It's not with your meal that dilutes your acids and causes other things. And then I have my cup of coffee.
mm-hmm.
Okay, that's my routine. Now it makes me feel like very set up for the day. And I may have a good day and I may have a bad day, but I believe that I'll have the best day I can have.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one, is that whole idea that you will set up your day.
Yep. I love that. I love that. You're priming the brain. What is there a supplement or something? There's so much out there right now. NAD, urolithin A, methylene blue. Is there anything that you've seen through your
Yeah,
group? Or
it's tough. I mean, you pick something like NAD, and yes, we know the basic mechanisms. We've done a lot of work on NAD at the Buck. We do basic research on autophagy. I can tell you that autophagy works. We did basic work on telomeres. But getting it from basic research to translational medicine, where you can actually, is NAD too big to really be absorbed through the blood-brain barrier? No one really knows. So could you take a chance on it and see if it works? Does rapamycin work? We just did a big study on dogs, which is you're going to think, oh my God, that what is that? Dogs actually are a better study than we've ever done because they live in the same environments we do,
Mm.
right? And it looks like it has effect. Like GLPT-1s, I can tell you this is something I can't believe I'm going to say, but I'm against taking anything you don't have to take unless your system biology is not working. Unless you find a genetic deficiency, like you have you don't, ferritin is too high and you need to do something, or you've done something in your life and it's affected, you have to take it. Do it when you have to do it. But I'm not a big believer that you should put other things in your system. But GLPT-1s have really been an accident, kind of like stick it notes, right? They didn't know what they were when they found it. And when they first developed them, they've been around for 17 years for diabetics. The only reason we developed them, we didn't develop them for you. No one gives a shit about you. They can make money off sick people. So
Yeah.
we developed them for people with diabetes. But they were designed to go and attach in your stomach. And it turns out they didn't. They attached in your brain. And then we found out that they attached in your brain, but wow, they seem to be connected to the sensors in your mouth. So it actually brings down addictive behavior in things that go in your mouth. So it actually brings down addictive behavior in food, which is, oh my God, we got what we needed. People are eating less, they lose weight, they have less inflammation, it helps them. But it also reduces in alcoholics because it goes into your mouth and it takes down addictive behavior.
Yeah.
The other thing it does is we don't know why yet, but it reduces inflammation horizontally. So there's a lot of people out there, a lot of doctors microdosing, not the big doses that you take to lose weight, not the big doses that you take when you're diabetic, but little doses that are actually seem to be bringing down horizontal. They're, preliminary studies, again, takes a while to figure this out, but it seems to impact, Alzheimer's, anything that's inflammation based, it tends to impact heart disease. I mean, really good studies. Now, again, as we take this random walk through my brain, what I would tell you is I like the GLPT-1s, but it is funny that there's something that's been around for hundreds and maybe thousands of years that's has just exactly the same profile of effectiveness, but people don't talk about it, which is saunas. When you look at the studies on saunas, it's unbelievable. If you
Yeah.
take a 15-minute sauna 5 times a week, especially in infrared light at a certain temperature, that you can bring down Alzheimer's and dementia and heart disease the same way. Now, is it is it because people do it because it's like that setup that they do it every day? Is it because they do it with other people? Is it because the belief is that it actually burns brown fat around your brain and around your organs because you're designed to protect yourself and survive. And if you're in the desert, they don't want your organs to fry. And that brown fat burning tends to release protective chemicals, and those protective chemicals tend to balance your body again, and then you tend to sweat out toxins. But I can talk about a GLP-1 it's going to cost you $800 a month, right? Or I can talk about taking a sauna. But it's easier to take a GLP-1 because you just take a shot once a week. It's tougher to change your lifestyle.
Right.
Our biggest issue is ourselves.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's always been the case, brother. Um, Man, no, I love that. This is all good stuff, and yeah, I've always said I think sauna is the best bang for your buck. You
Now,
know,
cold baths
method.
have some good things. They just don't affect everybody the same way because it brings blood into your organs when you get really cold, and then it releases them isometrically. I would I'll make a this is not a funny thing, but I think it's the reality is the conclusion I came to because a lot of our basic research goes to developing drugs and nutraceuticals. Like we have this thing that we licensed out called ketone, which actually puts you into ketosis. It's unbelievable. Like we'll test your, instead of having to, starve yourself or not eat carbohydrates
That's funny.
before a bad
I'm
meal.
drinking one of this.
Yeah, but it's truly,
Yeah,
I believe we do good things for the world. Now, we don't really make a lot of money on that or anything because we're a basic research institute and we get small royalties for patents and things like that. But when you look at what our real challenge is that I would say what's one of the best longevity books on the market is Atomic Habits.
yeah,
Read Atomic Habits. If you can change little things in your life that you do, you're going to change your lifestyle, and then therefore you're going to change your longevity. But habits are the toughest,
yeah,
especially when the world is working against us. And I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll tell you one funny story about why you should actually believe that you should change your habits. Okay, like people ask me why is America's obesity problem so much worse than any place else in the world, and what caused this, and is it a conspiracy, and so on and so on. I will tell you that my theory, again, I am not a historian, but I play one on TV, that what I've come to the conclusion is that the reason we're fatter is because we hate Russians. And I have a lot of data behind this, because in 1950, when we realized the Russians really weren't our friends, and that we, that they actually, we were going to be a superpower competing against them, there was a big thing where, a lot of government agencies with three letters went to the Department of Agriculture and said, one of the only ways we're going to survive is if we turn a lot of countries against Russia. And one of the best ways to do that is to export food. Okay. And so in the
Wow.
1950s, we quadrupled the amount of wheat, soy, and corn that we produce in the United States. And the majority of that went to other countries. Now, you can say, well, the Department of Agriculture, that made sense. But they also changed the triangle to include more carbohydrates, because we were helping American businesses, we were helping farmers, and we were actually controlling other countries because they depended on us. But what leaked out in the unintended consequences is the average American ate 1,000 more calories, and it was all carbohydrates in the 1950s. Okay, so if you had 1/3 more calories a day, so we'd say, well, they're just not exercising enough. No, we introduced something that literally turns into sugar,
Yep.
right? And therefore it causes inflammation. And then you fast forward into the 1980s, and there was a massive fight between the sugar industry, candy, and soft drinks, which soft drinks were taking off right then. Think about back to the Pepsi commercials and things. This is when it took off, and especially colas. Now, people always ask, why are colas? Because colas actually have a very unique attribute. When it touches your tongue, it changes its taste every time, which is
Mm.
why you can keep drinking colas, and why there's not more white drinks, right? It's not a, black versus white. It's a cola chemically changes, and especially when you put it over ice, the way that Coca-Cola wants you to do it, it's enticing. It makes you feel good. And in fact, they did a test that they had to pull back in Pepsi. Remember when they had those big liter bottles? They were testing how much can we get people to drink every week. And they would make the packaging bigger and bigger. And then they realized we could get you to drink as much as we could package. And we better stop doing that because people are going to regulate us. Okay. But what happened is there was a big fight between regulation on soft drinks and candy because of this carbohydrate thing, where it was clear to doctors that sugar was, you know, now they didn't look at carbohydrates as the problem. They looked at it as sugar. So they went after the soft drinks. They pointed the finger at fat, non-fat, 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 low fat, low fat, low fat. It was a double win for them,
Yeah.
because not only did we go to everything being non-fat, which then made everything taste like shit. They started 90% of goods that are over processed have injected sugar. So because we want it to taste good.
Yep.
The biggest problem, like I did a consulting project early in my career for a company called Stonyfield Yogurt, the healthiest yogurt on the market. Today it is not. The most popular yogurt is the most poisonous, because yogurt is considered a healthy category. So people want to buy it, and then they take what tastes the best.
Yep.
And it when they take the reason they get it taste the best is because they actually inject it with sugar and adulterated fruit. So again, when you look at why this happened to us, our entire economic system, but not on purpose. Hospitals weren't designed to make cancer profitable, and no one thought to themselves that this carbohydrate thing was going to make us fat. Stop. We're not going to stop blaming people. But what it does tell us is that we have to change the way we participate in our own healthcare, because the system, not mean, they're not evil people, but the system designed today will not change unless we actually participate and start doing things differently. So my big argument to you is go pick up Atomic Habits and think about which habits are you going to change in those 5 categories, Are you going to smile at someone every day? Are you going to hug people a little bit more? Are you going to say "I love you" at the end of every time you talk to someone? And you can snicker at that. All of those things over time literally reprogram your brain and your system biology. So we are in control. It just sucks that we have to be in control. I'd rather take a shot.
Blair LaCorte, you dropped some fire today, brother. I really appreciate you. When do you go to space, man? By the way.
Where we just got our new fleet of ships out, I had a chance to go on the last fleet, and I let one of my buddies go up instead, and he's out there teaching and having a great time. So we're now into our new set at Virgin Galactic, and so I'd say in the next year, 18 months as we process through it. But the only reason I'm going into space is because when I talked to Richard Branson at the beginning of this, and I got involved, his point was when you look at what astronauts say is different about them after they go into space, it's that they have a very different view of humanity in the world. It's called the Overwatch effect, right? And so I'm looking, forward to it because I want to go up there, and it's very similar to what a lot of people would say they see in psychedelics, is that you get a bigger connection to everything in the
Yeah.
universe when you separate from the magnetic field. You actually see that you are connected to everything and everybody. Thank you for what you're doing and trying to make let people's lives better. That's the way it happens. One person affects two people, affect four. So it was great to talk to you, Joel.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you, and I would love to have you back on post space if that's possible. Post.
And I want to be on because that means I'm alive. So it's
Yeah.
good.
Awesome. Hey, Blair, last but not least, where can people find you, man? If they want to connect and just learn all the good things that you guys are up to.
Sure. If you I have a coaching group that's it's under PPE Mastermind. So if you ever want to go up to the website, you can see a bunch of free videos and things like that. Or if I can do something for you in less than 5 minutes, get me on LinkedIn and ask me the question. I'll tell you right away. I'm also a big believer that little tiny things helping people can to turn into big things. Just don't ask me to do something that takes me an hour.
Awesome. Blair, thanks for being on the show, brother.
All right,
Appreciate
man.
you. Safe travels to space. And I really do mean I'd love to have you back on when you come back, and I would love to hear how that all went. So
I wore my special shirt for you.
it's very colorful.